the newsagents.
I think I was without a question bothered by it more than he was, and I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, 100 miles away from where this went down. But I do think that we should take this opportunity to call for a reduction in the ridiculous and inflammatory political rhetoric coming from too many corners of our politics.
I'm sure an awful lot of people would say amen to that from J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate. But as J.D. Vance was saying this, Donald Trump was tweeting the following: that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's rhetoric had taken politics in our country to a whole new level of hatred, abuse and distrust. Because of this communist left rhetoric, the bullets are flying and it will only get worse. Maybe J.D. Vance needs to have a word with Donald Trump. Welcome to the Newsagents. It's John.
It's Emily.
And we teased it on yesterday's episode at the end. And now we can announce it. We're going live, on tour. The Newsagents, out in the country. Full details at the end of the show.
Can we just, spoiler alert, tell people we've started off with a tiny little venue to get our rehearsal.
Just to relax
feeling
us into
okay,
it.
Relax us. Yeah, nothing like the Albert Hall, just to sort of soothe the nerves, is it? But anyway, I am speaking to you from New York, where I have just done a mega junket, I guess. I've done 20 interviews in one day. I have been on the wrong side, the other side of the mic this time. Instead of doing the interviews, I've been trying to do the answers, which has been so utterly weird and hard work. I'm crawling back gratefully to the day job, Sopes, you'll be pleased to hear, or maybe you won't.
Well, we will look forward to seeing you back in the studio, I think, tomorrow when you've just come off the red eye. So, I mean, I'm dying to hear all about it and, the media appearances and all the rest of it. So I'm sure it's been astonishing. Maitlis as movie star. I want to hear all about it. Maybe even get the T-shirt. But we ought to talk about what has also been happening, much less importantly in America, with the presidential election. And Donald Trump absolutely going through a 180 in reaction to the second assassination attempt, where after the first one, we all remember him saying slightly kind of unconvincingly, I am a changed man, I want to bring the nation together. After the second attempt, he has wrested control of the microphone again to announce that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are responsible because their rhetoric led to this man lying in a bush for 12 hours waiting to kill me, or words to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think America is kind of still digesting what has happened. And there are a lot of questions being asked today about security. And don't forget that the Secret Service has only got an acting head at the moment around Trump because the last one was essentially fired for not having protected him well enough at the last attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania in July. And so you've got this question that's circulating about whether the Secret Service had done their job enough. You've got questions circulating about whether Trump was given the same level of protection that he would have been if he'd been in office. And the answer to that is not quite, but almost as much. You've got questions circulating as to whether you can ever keep a man who owns several golf courses with wide stretches of land truly safe when it's not hard to work out that on a Sunday afternoon he's going to be on one of those. And then you've got this sort of much more political question, which is who is upping the rhetoric and is it feeding into the violence? And Joe Biden is trying to tell us that, American political violence has no place in America when we know that clearly it does. 4 of their presidents have been assassinated and there have been 16 attempted assassinations. So, the moments, the periods of American history where that hasn't happened, even as an attempt, are more rare than the ones where it has.
Yeah, exactly. And, after the JFK killing, there was that whole phrase that was used that America had gone through a loss of innocence, as if there had been this virginal period beforehand where nothing bad ever happened. It has happened, and it's happened repeatedly. I suppose what's unusual about this is the fact that there seem to have been 2 attempts, although it's worth underlining that on the weekend at the West Palm Beach Golf Club, no shot was fired by the would-be assassin. The only shots that were fired were by the Secret Service at him before he fled. And who knows whether, if Trump had come into view, whether he would have fired off a round or not. So it's not like it was what happened in Butler, where shots were fired and Trump was lucky not to be, hit grievously. Instead, no shots had been fired at this particular event. But Donald Trump's messaging has been contradictory. This is what he said about the phone call he had from Joe Biden.
It was very nice that he called up to make sure I was okay, to make sure that, do I have any suggestions or anything? We do need more people on my detail because we have 50, 60,000 people showing up to events. Other people don't have that.
So leave aside Donald Trump having, even in that short clip, having to boast about his crowd size being bigger than anyone else's because no one else gets crowds like I do. It seems to be rather gracious and that he's pleased that Joe Biden is doing this and giving him the extra security. And at the same time, the Trump campaign is going full steam ahead in blaming Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and their rhetoric for all that is happening, that they have taken politics in our country to a whole new level of hatred, abuse and distrust. Because of this communist rhetoric, the bullets are flying and it will only get worse, allowing millions of people from places unknown to invade and take over our country. It is an unpardonable sin, says Donald Trump. So at the same time, thanks, Joe, you're doing all of this for me, but actually you're the problem.
Yes, and I think part of this is related to the kind of conversation we were having yesterday, which is J.D. Vance, who found himself on the back foot over the weekend for essentially admitting that this whole crazy cat dog eating story about Springfield, Ohio, was in part fabricated, he said, to bring the world's media to the city of Springfield to tell them the bigger story, which is about Haitian immigrants living there. And I think that piled on the heat yesterday on J.D. Vance, who found himself kind of in the spotlight in a rather humiliating way. And I think it's what has made him double down now on those comments by Trump, which we saw on his social media site, which is essentially saying it's all Harris's fault. They're the communists, and I don't see anyone having tried to take a shot at them. I mean, you cannot in one breath say they're responsible for political rhetoric. Why hasn't anyone tried to shoot them yet? Right? It doesn't work. But that is the needle he's trying to thread right now.
I'm not going to say that conservatives always get things exactly right. But the big difference between conservatives and liberals is that no one has tried to kill Kamala Harris in the last couple of months, and 2 people now have tried to kill Donald Trump in the last couple of months. I'd say that's pretty strong evidence that the left needs to tone down the rhetoric and needs to cut this crap out. Somebody's going to get hurt by it, and it's going to destroy this country.
I do actually think that there is a serious point that he's making here, which is that I guess for the last 8 years, there has been this label of is he a fascist or would-be fascist surrounding Trump. And that is because, not to put too fine a point on it, many Democrats truly believe that he is, and that if he was allowed back in power, he would be. And they point to Project 25, this blueprint for a new administration, which Trump, don't forget, has distanced himself from consistently, particularly in recent weeks. But they say this is essentially a blueprint for a really ugly authoritarian state. But the point J.D. Vance is making is you can't talk about somebody being a fascist or bringing the end of democracy without encouraging a few crazies. I don't really know what to make of that, because I think it is kind of on the face of it true, except that Democrats truly believe that is what is coming at them with a new Trump administration.
But surely calling for the elimination of Donald Trump, absolutely wrong side of the line. There should be nothing that begets political violence. I kind of thought, I mean, I saw a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. yesterday saying, oh my God, another assassination attempt. What am I going to tell my five young children about this now? Why do they keep asking about what is happening to their grandfather? It is terrible. That is the same Donald Trump Jr. who was making jokes about Nancy Pelosi's husband getting attacked really seriously with a hammer by a madman who came into their home in California. So, I mean, don't be too high and mighty, Don Jr., because you have indulged in this yourself. The other thing I would say about Donald Trump representing a threat to democracy, there was an attempted insurrection at the Capitol on the 6th of January to prevent the peaceful transfer of power, which, you know, we saw Donald Trump giving the speech beforehand saying you've got to fight like hell to save your country. And with him initially, in the initial stages, watching, apparently enjoying what he was seeing and doing nothing to call off the mob until 2 or 3 hours later when he was eventually prevailed upon to do so. So, you know, there is stuff the way you say illegitimate. Anything that begets violence is illegitimate in my book if you're a democratic politician. Yeah. But when you are pointing out things that have challenged democracy, as January the 6th undoubtedly did, that's fair political dialogue.
And I guess, yes, the question really that remains unanswered is whether the political language of violence does have any bearing on individuals in a country where there are many, many guns and many, many mental health problems. This man was known to the police. It is impossible to police an area which is essentially a golf course perimeter with a fence. And as you said, he never even fired that shot. He just poked the gun through the railings and was mercifully, brilliantly spotted by the agents at that point. I don't know that we can answer the big question, which is, how do you manage to anticipate that? You know, in a country of hundreds of millions of people, some of whom will be quite crazy and many of whom will be armed.
Look, the problem is the logical chain that takes you from A to B, isn't it? The problem is that there are guns in America, we know that. Yes, there is sometimes heated rhetoric, and politics loves to use the language of war, the battle, the skirmish, the fight, etc. But to say, well, it's like kids watching something violent on television. It makes them violent, act out acts of violence in the playground. Well, the causal link, why doesn't it affect all children? Why is it only 1 or 2 that go rogue? And so I think that is where it becomes problematic. It is a societal problem. There is no way that you can pin this on Kamala Harris or Joe Biden any more than you could pin it on Donald Trump for some of the language that he has used. And I just think that this is a really dangerous area to be getting into. I think the other thing that is, you know, I suspect is that Donald Trump thinks that since Joe Biden pulled out of the race, it has been going really awfully for him. And he needs to do something to reset it and to take the agenda off his poor debate performance and the eating of the cats and the dogs and to get it onto something else. And it looks like the campaign has very deliberately thought, right, this assassination attempt, we are going to blame it all on Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and make this the issue now going forward. And that is the way we seize the news agenda.
I wonder. I mean, I was talking to people last night, very influential kind of, you know, New York media figures who are quietly convinced that Donald Trump doesn't regret the whole cats and dogs thing, thinks that actually he's done exactly what he intended to do, which was make that the only thing that anyone remembered from the debate. And that it left you walking away sort of going, well, I think Kamala was okay. I think she was quite good. I think she was sort of likable. But they don't actually remember anything she said. They don't remember her plans for the economy. They don't remember her saying anything on immigration. They are just left with this sense of fear, once again, that Trump has created. And frankly, amongst Democrats, they're nervous that that has actually done what he intended to do, which is put fear, put immigration right at the heart of the campaign again. Remember, we're only looking at tiny, tiny margins in very, very critical swing states here. And if that is the message that goes through, they don't think that there is a comfortable win for
Yeah.
Kamala Harris
Look,
here at all.
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, I think that, yeah, probably it didn't land quite the way that Donald Trump wanted to in the first 12, 24 hours after the debate. But, you know, people have been talking about Springfield, Ohio endlessly. They have been talking about Haitians and how many ducks are left in the park and all the rest of it. And it has thrown the focus exactly where the Trump campaign want to have the debate. Can I just add a footnote to this whole kind of mess over the second assassination attempt? And that is Mr. Elon Musk, who tweeted, "No one is even trying to assassinate Biden/Kamala." A post that he has since deleted because it seemed to be pretty much an encouragement that maybe people should go after Biden and Kamala. And the Secret Service has been alerted to it, and it would seem has spoken to him about it. And maybe there is some problem for Elon Musk having kind of tweeted what looks like an incitement. He's then since posted, and I just love this, and I love this so much. The owner of Twitter has said, well, one lesson I've learned is that just because I say something to a group and they laugh doesn't mean it's going to be all that hilarious as a post on X. Turns out that jokes are way less funny if people don't know the context and the delivery is plain text. God, what insight from the owner of X, that you need maybe occasionally to be a little bit careful about what you say.
Also, it raises the question of, could an owner technically get cancelled from his own site for posting something that many of his own users disagreed with? I mean, I don't know. The mind boggles at this point because, A, it shows this incredible naivety of which we kind of know Elon Musk is capable. And B, it kind of suggests that the Twitter sphere is now out of his control as well. Really. I mean, we've had this sense, haven't we, that we're all being dragged into Elon Musk's sort of lair, his cesspit of kind of pretty unpleasant postings nowadays. But maybe he is not only the cause of it, but also ends up being on the receiving end of all the abuse too. I mean, it is possible, right? In which case, you know, he's thinking, how do I get off this site too? And I own it.
I know. I'm just waiting for the tweet which says this X post has been deleted because it breaks community rules. You know, that someone from X is going to say to the owner of X, you can't do this and you've got to stop it. It seems on this occasion Musk deleted it himself. But it just goes to show the kind of out of control nature of the political dialogue when the owner is having to delete his own tweets because they offend in such a way. Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Well, I'm delighted to say that we're joined in the studio now by Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. We're recording this at 1:10, and she's just got out of the restaurant that she was in for lunch yesterday with Nick Ferrari. So clearly a moral there: don't go drinking for 24 hours with Nick Ferrari.
Yeah, it's been a long few hours, John, which I'm sure, as you can attest to from your former life.
Yeah,
you're more than versed at a long lunch. I'm sure.
Sometimes you have to go for a very, very long lunch with too much booze. Anyway, look, it's good to see you. The Labour Party conference next week, Liverpool. I'm sure it's going to be a joyous, celebratory atmosphere. This huge majority that was won in July. But there are some clouds, and we've seen it a bit this week with not just the policy that you're going to adopt, but some of the sort of choices that are being made. And it was a bit eyebrow raising to see Keir Starmer and Georgia Maloney as sort of two potential, you know, soulmates.
They are not political bedfellows, are they, John, at all? And we've saw that Keir Starmer obviously has to come forward with something new to stop the boats, right? It was something that he made a big deal of in the election campaign, that he was going to scrap Rwanda, but we still don't have any plan to actually replace it with. And he knows that those boats are continuing to cross the channel. He had 800 migrants come earlier this week just on one day alone. And this is going to be a real thorn in his side for him, which is why he made this trip to speak to Giorgia Meloni earlier this week in Rome. It doesn't seem like there's been a huge amount that's come out of it so far. He obviously said he was interested in some of their models, talking about a deal with Albania, a deal with Tunisia, a potential for some sort of offshoring agreement, but we haven't got any sort of solid ideas around what that could look like just yet.
But am I right in saying this isn't Rwanda Mark II? This is something very different from Rwanda, because anyone who was going to be sent to Rwanda would only be getting citizenship in Rwanda. They were never going to be coming to Britain as UK citizens. This is more about processing people who might come into Britain. Is that right?
That's exactly right. It's not Rwanda 2. It is about, like I say, processing them, offshore agreement. And that's something that Keir Starmer didn't rule out in their campaign, something that he said he wanted to explore. And I think we'll see that idea explored in the coming months. And of course, Italy has had huge success with these two models, right? They've seen their small boats crossing from North Africa cut by something like 60%. So an incredible, opportunity to do something that works. And if we know anything about Keir Starmer, we know that he's a guy that wants to look at the proof being in the pudding, a little bit like Rishi Sunak, actually, in some ways, looking at the data and be prepared. He's prepared, obviously, to get into bed with Giorgia Meloni, as it were.
Metaphorically.
Metaphorically, of course. To talk to people who are not his natural political bedfellows if there is a solution that can work. However, it's got a little bit of a backlash from some of his own MPs, actually, already. Some of them saying, Kim Johnson, speaking to The Guardian earlier this week, she said it's disturbing that Keir Starmer is seeking to learn lessons from a neo-fascist government, and that's not quite all in one big happy family, and that's not really the message he wants ahead of Labour conference.
I guess it's funny how sort of history kind of doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Tony Blair, Cherie Blair, went on holiday with Silvio Berlusconi and were entertained by him. And there are some really extraordinary pictures of Silvio Berlusconi wearing this very odd headdress with Tony Blair and Cherie looking slightly uncomfortable in his wake as you're, swept up in the hoopla. And, Giorgia Meloni might not be as colourful as Berlusconi was, and
she's pretty colourful, actually. There was a report this week, I don't know if you saw it, John, where she was saying that under Rishi Sunak she used to be sipping Aperol spritzes and chugging on cigarettes in her meetings with the Prime Minister at the time. So she is a colourful character, to say the least.
Yeah, I don't want to go into comparisons, but I'm going to say compared to a Bunga Bunga party, which Tony Blair never attended. For the sake of any libel lawyers listening, I am not suggesting for any one moment that Tony Blair attended a Bunga Bunga party with Silvio Berlusconi. But Berlusconi was a colourful character. The other thing that's come out this week, and again, it sort of falls into that odd category of, is it a scandal, is it not, or is it just got an odd smell? And that is the sort of disclosure that Lord Ali, the sort of TV mogul or very wealthy Labour supporter, has been buying clothes for Mrs. Starmer, for Lady Starmer, as well as buying Keir Starmer suits and glasses and other things to the value of thousands of pounds. And you kind of think, well, hang on, I'm able to get myself dressed in the morning and you're able to get yourself dressed in the morning, and we haven't got people underwriting us.
Glasses for passes, that was what it was called a couple of weeks ago, when it was revealed that Lord Ali, the Labour peer, had actually got a pass to Downing Street as well. And so this is a little bit rubbing off that sort of cronyism row that kind of erupted over the summer about people being appointed to the heart of Labour government in quite odd places. And we still don't really know what Lord Ali was doing there at the heart of Downing Street. And now it's emerged that he's also paying for Lady Starmer's clothes budget, as it were. Reports of thousands of pounds being spent on dresses for her. And I think just, for many people, juxtaposing that with at the same time you're cutting winter fuel payments because apparently you've not got enough money, and you need to fund this £22 billion black hole. People will look at Keir Starmer and, remember some of the comments he made to LBC during the election about what middle class is, what kind of class he is, and, what that kind of thing means. I think he's going to get a little bit of a backlash for it. It doesn't quite smell right, does it? Whether it's a scandal or not, I think taxpayers, voters are going to look at this and go, he's got enough money, hasn't he, when he's a Prime Minister, to be able to buy his own clothes, to have some very rich peer to buy them for him. Just doesn't quite, I don't think, smell right. So there is another sort of cloud overshadowing the Labour Party conference and where this might go, whether there are any more things that Keir Starmer's office apparently didn't declare within the time limited period. Now, Number 10 say that they asked for advice and clarification from the relevant authorities about what they should be declaring. But I don't remember Carrie Johnson, I don't remember Rishi Sunak's wife Ashkata Murty declaring any sort of closed budget in a similar sense. And I'm sure someone will say, well, maybe they had a little bit more money than the Starmers, but it's still a little bit of an odd look. But they seem very clearly today, and anyway, at least, to be brushing that off. You've seen these lovely pictures of Lady Starmer all over the papers at London Fashion Week this week, wearing a borrowed outfit yesterday. So no questions asked, Your Honour, about that one.
Yeah, it's such an interesting area. Years ago, when I was in Paris as the Paris correspondent for the BBC, I had lunch with Cherie Blair and Fiona Miller, who was then her press person, Alistair Campbell's other half, who does a podcast apparently. And
I've not heard of it.
No, heard of it either. And Cherie had come that morning from having been with the French fashion designer Agnes B. And she said, I'm going to get Agnes B to design for me. She's offered me a 10% discount, but I've beat her down to 20%. So she's going to give me a 20% discount on her clothes. And I thought, oh my God, how unseemly in a way that you're there talking about how much you're going to get as a discount off the clothes. You are the Prime Minister's wife. You are the Prime Minister's wife, but in the British system, unlike being the First Lady in America, there is no support, there is no office, there is no constitutional recognition or understanding of your role. And so if you turn up wearing the same clothes day in, day out, and you're meant to be going to state banquets and you're meant to be at London Fashion Week, and you are on parade in a way that you're not just a private citizen, then you kind of think, well, who should foot the bill for this? I mean, I agree with you on the smell test. I think that it smells awful that, the Starmers have been taking kind of sackloads of clothes from designer or whatever. I don't know what sort of clothes they are. But at the same time, I do see
they're on the world stage, aren't they? And they are expected to be dressed and look in a certain way. And, like I say, I remember when it was Carrie Johnson, everybody used to say, oh, she's being so eco-friendly. She's recycling her dress. She's wearing it again. But yeah, she also did like to borrow dresses. And that, again, they linked that into the eco-ness of Carrie Johnson and what that stood for. But yes, you're completely right. There isn't quite the same level of sort of, taxpayer-funded support. And that was the response from Starmer. He was saying that I'm going to continue to receive gifts from people. I'm going to continue to receive donations. All MPs get donations. And again, that doesn't quite wash with the whole squeaky clean image of Keir Starmer that he promised in the election campaign. That's sort of my takeaway from it.
Natasha, thank you. I will leave you to go and put some cucumber over your eyes and take a couple of Panadol and other brands obviously available. Thank you. I bet you have waited breathlessly for the end of this episode so you would get the details of how to come and see the newsagents live on stage. Goodall, Sopel and Maitlis all together on a stage. Oh Lord, God help us. Listen, tickets for the show will be available on general sale from 10 a.m. this Friday, the 20th of September, and can be purchased through Global Player, the official app for all of Global's radio stations, podcasts and playlists. And you don't have to pay anything to get onto Global Player or download Global Player. You might have to pay a few bob to come and see us at the Royal Albert Hall. We really hope you will come and see us there. Bye-bye.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.